You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
These videos are satiric reviews. You don't have to agree, but don't bitch about it.
The Room is one of the most unintentionally hilarious self-insertion fanfictions of all time. It's almost the type of movie a child would make after marathoning through HBO and then thinking, oh yeah, no, I could do that. If the original draft of this movie was not written in crayon, honestly, I'd be surprised. It's a masterpiece of bad. A disaster piece, if you will. It's so heinous and unwatchable that it comes around full circle to being entertainingly unforgettable. If you for some rhyme or reason haven't seen this, you need to go get your hands on a copy. Or, watch any of the thousands of reviews of it on YouTube. The movie is so inept, and not just from a writing, directing standpoint, although to be fair it is from them too, but inept enough in the understanding of how human beings act, and interact, and react, and nobody in this movie can act. There is so much done wrong that honestly, it's a shock to me. It's a genuine shock to me that someone managed to press record. And I mean all of this in the best way possible, of course. It's an amazingly bad movie. Words can't properly articulate it's awful. It needs to be seen with your own eyeballs and heard with your own earballs.
I'm not gonna put up with that. I'm gonna do what I wanna do, and that's it. What do you think I should do?
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you.
And I'm dying.
You're not dying, Mom.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
Look, don't worry about it. Everything will be fine.
I owe him some money.
What kind of money?
I owe him some money.
What kind of money?
You're not my fucking mother!
You listen to me, old boy!
I'm sorry. It won't happen again, I promise.
Denny, you know that Johnny's like your father.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys. One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street. Nothing, man.
Do you have some secrets?
Forget it.
Why don't you tell
Why?
me?
Forget it, dude.
Is it some secret?
No,
Tell me.
forget it.
Come
I'll
on.
talk to you later.
Well, whatever.
What kind of movie are we gonna see?
Well, we'll see. Danny, don't blame too much. It may not come out right.
I know she doesn't like me because sometimes she's mean to me, but sometimes when I'm around her, I feel like I want to kiss her and tell her that I love her.
Danny, don't worry about that. I'm your future husband.
You sure about that? Maybe I'll change my mind.
How dare you talk to me like that? You should tell me everything.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Why are you so hysterical?
Get into it.
Underwear man, come on.
You want to see doctor?
No, I'm tough. I'm good.
Something crazy like that. Why are you smoking that crap? I mean, it's no wonder you can think straight. What are you, nuts? I'm so depressed. It's all her fault. She's such a manipulative bitch. How the hell did you let this happen? You know this is gonna ruin your friendship with Johnny.
You guys want to play some football? Come on. Cheep, 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 cheep.
All right, that's it. I'm done.
In short, it's a story about Johnny, who's played by the disaster artist himself, Tommy Wiseau. And Johnny is the greatest person in the world, despite everyone around him treating him like shit. His girlfriend cheats on him with his best friend, the bank he works at is screwing him over, and his favorite florist doesn't even recognize him. As a great man would say, that's how times. A lot of people on YouTube have already talked about the movie The Disaster Artist, the movie about the making of the movie The Room. That in of itself comes from an autobiography written by Greg Sestero, the film's second lead. And while I did enjoy and appreciate the movie, I don't know if I personally would have pinpointed it as a for your consideration type project. So since I'm a negative, cynical, sardonic fuck, let's start with all the negatives. I don't like Dave Franco in this movie. I mean, I like him as an actor. He's good at playing the sleazy douche or the dumb fuck jock. and I'm sure he's capable of a wider range. Here, he never really comes across as Greg Sestero. Not only is he considerably shorter than the actual Greg, not only do the two have entirely different sounding and distinct voices. I know that's a weird thing to harp on, but seriously, listen to these two back to back.
Oh, wow.
Hey guys.
I mean, the candles, the music,
the sexy dress. I mean, what's going on here?
Johnny's my best
friend. Right? You're getting married next month. Come on.
I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys. One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
It'd be like me trying to play Snake Plissken. Like, sure, you can get me a wig, but come on, who are we really fooling here, you know? It'd be like when Lou got hair at the end of Hot Tub Time Machine. But back on to Dave. There is literally nothing about his performance that channels the actual man that he's playing. I was instantaneously reminded of Patch Adams, the movie in which Robin Williams played a real-life doctor, and him and the writers completely muddled that man's life's work. Which, ironically, Greg Sestero actually had a bit part in. So, you know, full circle. Again, don't get me wrong, Dave Franco is not a bad actor by any stretch of the imagination. But that's all he comes across as in this movie. An actor playing a part that his brother gave to him. He never once tries to act like his real-life counterpart. He just seems like he's playing any other Dave Franco character. Except maybe here he's a little bit more modest. Because, you know, Dave Franco usually plays dicks. It's not just Dave Franco's performance, but it's the actual script's depiction of who Greg is. The movie depicts him as one of Tommy's biggest believers. He's constantly defending his friendship to others and defending how clearly inept Tommy is. In the movie's timeline, Greg met Tommy and despite his odd performance, was captivated enough by him to want to befriend him and eventually work with him.
Hey, I'm Greg.
Yeah.
In Greg's book, which depicts his version of events, it's much more clear that Greg didn't necessarily believe that Tommy could succeed, but he wanted to believe that he could. The two's friendship really begins from Greg finding Tommy's absurd performance kind of ballsy, if not entirely ridiculous. In the movie, Greg eagerly accepts the role of Mark, happy to get any kind of work. Whereas in real life, Greg was offered the part, turned it down several times over, and only finally agreed after Tommy offered him an absurd amount of money. Even after all this, he still had to reason to himself that it would be fine because no one would ever actually see the movie.
What a story, Mark.
And that is entirely polar opposite of Greg's reaction in the film, where he's pretty much psyched about the whole thing from the jump. In The Disaster Artist, we see Greg anxious about certain scenes of the room. He's not the unwilling participant that he was in real life. In this, he's very much into the performance that he's giving, which again is so substantially different than how it went down in real life. In the movie, he even tells his girlfriend that he doesn't think the movie will be bad. Something that the real Greg full well expected. As a matter of fact, he thought it would be every bit of the catastrophe that it ended up being. The real Greg seemingly knew that this was a train wreck waiting to happen, which is why he actually turned down the role of Mark initially several times over. The movie tells the story somewhat differently, showing a much more enthusiastic, twice as naive, and 3 times as understanding Greg. Greg in this movie is a lot more happy to be working with Tommy. Their relationship is one of blind support, whereas in reality, Greg kind of just found himself in a lot of these situations, usually against his will, until he was talked into it or offered something that would benefit him. Another thing this movie excludes or just downright downplays is Tommy's near obsession with Greg. Often in the book does Greg compare their friendship to the wonderful Mr. Ripley, a movie Tommy also has taken some intrigue in. A movie based around obsession. There's a few times in the book itself where Greg's discomfort is apparent, and that doesn't often come across on screen. It's a Hollywood movie. Things are always going to be changed. Things are always going to be condensed to try to fit a more formulaic story. But to me personally, I feel like there are so many people out there that are missing the rich and ridiculous true stories of The Room. Some of the things that went unmentioned were the fact that the roles of Mark and Lisa were actually given up to other actors at first.
Damn it, I don't believe it! Oh, hi, Mark.
I once knew a girl who slept like a dozen guys.
One of them found out and beat her ass. She wound up in hospital.
What a story, Mark. You know, I'm so happy you are my best friend, and Lisa loved me so much.
Apparently, Tommy wasn't fond of that Mark's performance and offered Greg more money for the role. And instead of firing the original Mark, he just filmed both he and Greg doing their takes one after the other, stating that the studio... Oh yeah, that was another thing. For a short while, Tommy tried to pull off that the room had much bigger backers outside of his own pocket. Of which, by the way, he himself, who was the studio, spent $6 million on it. I've heard some people, namely Doug, the nostalgia critic, mention the film altering Tommy somewhat to be a much more sympathetic character. But I entirely disagree. I don't think they altered Tommy at all. He is without a doubt a somewhat sad, sympathy-worthy loner who kind of is a societal black sheep. He's not thought highly of in any real circles or cliques. He's just alone with his own weirdness.
Tommy's life study of human interaction had been put into a final draft blender and sprinkled with the darkness of whatever he'd been living through. The one thing Tommy's script wasn't about, despite its character's claims: love. Our friendship was the most human experience Tommy had had in the last few years. Maybe ever.
It's easy to feel for that. However, what I think Doug meant to say is that the film favors Tommy Wiseau. While they never outright lie or change any of his core characteristics, the film does only shine a light on his more tragic or redeemable features. While the movie does toy around and give a sneak peek to some of Tommy's more manipulative behavior or downright sour ways, it's very heavy-handed on trying to inspire empathy from the audience, choosing to leave out some of those not-so-likable Tommy quirks. The Disaster Artist does, however, detail Tommy's need for approval and control, something the real Tommy radiates. Why take this after the movie cameo? The after-the-credits scene between Tommy and Tommy is really weird. It's also entirely unnecessary. It doesn't have anything else to do with the story. So in that sense, I guess it was perfect to put in a Making of the Room movie. There's also a reason for this scene, and as to why it's dead last in the movie. In a day and age where audiences are accustomed to staying in theaters to catch an after-the-credits scene, still, this has gone almost entirely unnoticed. I mean, I've seen the movie more times than I'm comfortable with admitting, and it wasn't until my very last viewing that I caught it. Keep in mind that at this point in time, the movie's played out. The reenactments show up the second after the end title screen, and the credits roll out after that, with James Franco's Tommy singing along to The Rhythm of the Night. Then after a few minutes of darkness to indicate that the movie's over, then does this less than a minute scene play out.
Hey, how you doing? Fine, yeah, fine. Why you out? Yeah, why are you so lonely? Tell me. What? I'm just standing here alone. Don't mean I'm lonely. I need help. I see it. What is this accent? It sounds familiar. You from New Orleans? Yeah.
In which James Franco's Tommy Wiseau meets the real Tommy Wiseau in a Fu Manchu. Why is it here? Well, because Tommy demanded that he film a cameo that made it into the final edit. He also demanded it be with James Franco. When I say he demanded, I really mean he demanded. As in, he refused to sell the rights to the room and his own life story, which would have undoubtedly made the movie a bit harder to make. Tommy studied and prepared for this role. He even purchased his own attire and look. Franco said they wrote the scene for him, but he improvised with each and every take. So Tommy is still Tommy. And really, isn't that what's most important? I think that this alone really describes what the real Tommy is like. And while Franco's interpretation was good, and I'd even go so far as to say accurate, it only plays Tommy in the most sensitive of lights. Which is probably why the movie has Tommy's seal of approval, while the book does not. You see, Tommy Wiseau has gone on record to say that the book is only about 40% accurate, while he's made claims that the movie is 99.9% accurate. However, interviews from his other cast members kind of seem to back Greg's telling of events more than Tommy's. And while that side of Tommy does exist, and I could see why they choose to betray Tommy as a tragic figure, because in a lot of ways he is, however, they didn't go into depth with just how angry, passive-aggressive, and overall, again, manipulative the real Tommy can be. Again, I'm not saying Tommy is a good or bad person, but it is a double-sided coin, and maybe the guy does cause a lot of his own trouble. I think the fact that he wouldn't agree to let this movie be put together without his inclusion speaks volumes of who he is in real life. It's gotta be about Tommy. It's always gotta be about Tommy. Hell, it's Tommy's planet after all. That's also another thing that goes into a lot more depth in the book, which I recommend reading to get the full story behind The Room. One of the biggest non-inclusions was the fact that Greg was basically in charge of everything on set, despite having next to zero experience in such a situation. The ending is a complete work of fiction, whereas it shows Tommy's humiliation almost immediately fade away upon hearing audience applause. The house wasn't packed that night. Not all the cast and crew were there like it depicts, and they most certainly did not get an ironic standing ovation. The entire ending is completely made up. It would be years before Tommy would accept his reputation and try to capitalize off it in some way, shape, or form. Even to this day, depending on his mood, he takes exception to criticism over his alleged masterpiece. As good as this movie is, and believe me, it is well put together, they missed the boat on so many behind-the-scenes stories that could have really added to this movie. Like the actor who played Peter. He got a concussion on set and had to continue to film scenes while he was in a daze, which would explain the incessant blinking and touching of objects. Seriously, what is he doing back here? Now you know. I mean, how did this not at the very least get a mention from somebody in the movie? Because they didn't include the original actors in the story, there's a big chunk of it they're missing out on. Like how the original Lisa and Mark wound up getting together. I guess they were method actors. Though some would think, oh hey, this might add chemistry to the movie. Tommy thought, oh hey, time to fire both of them. They don't really touch on some of the more interesting issues. This movie would have you believe that Sandy, who's played here by Seth Rogen, was always a part of the crew. And that's not true. The crew, top to bottom, was scrubbed twice. They had 3 entirely different behind-the-scenes teams. Hell, I don't think they even mentioned Peter leaving the film early and having to replace him last minute with the Steven character, who just kind of manifests out of nowhere. That being said, there's a lot I did enjoy about the movie. As a matter of fact, overall, I liked it. I've watched it several times, some of which were back-to-back in succession with The Room. Everyone in the movie is a famous actor, so amongst bringing The Room's gigantic cult following into theaters, a lot of people were also lining up to see their favorite comedians, and I think they did a good job of giving everyone their time to shine. I know a lot of people complained about this, but I don't understand why. They hired known actors to act. I don't really think that's a problem. However, what I really liked is that despite having well-known actors, none of them eat away at the screen time. Everyone just feels like they're on screen just enough to be funny and allow the story to progress. So despite being an overpacked, somewhat star-studded cast, it made good use of them. There are no bad performances in this film whatsoever. I know I shit on Dave Franco for the first part of this review, but even he did a decent job. It wasn't that he was bad, he just wasn't all that accurate. It's like when everyone says that Heath Ledger was the greatest Joker of all time. But he never really played the Joker, you know? He just played a villain in clown makeup. He was great, don't get me wrong, he just wasn't the Joker. Kind of like Jared Leto, except he's not great, and he still just isn't the Joker. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about the douche from Spider-Man. James Franco apparently directed the whole movie as Tommy, which is hilarious. If they didn't, then they should have filmed the behind the scenes to make a Tommy and James documentary in the future. I'm sure Netflix would want to pick it up. I've probably underplayed how great Franco is as Wiseau, but it's only because anyone and everyone has already said it. It was absolutely spot on. What's really great about this performance is that it never comes across as James Franco in a wig doing a Tommy Wiseau impression. He truly fades into the character, and this whole movie really serves as a testament to James Franco and just how talented he is. Also said in every review before mine, but also equally important, they really did nail those reenactments. They were perfect in perfection. I don't know if I would have made the call to place them together as a compilation, but they were a nice touch. So what do I think about the movie, The Disaster Artist? I think it was a good movie. But ultimately, that's all it ever feels like to me. A movie. And it's a damn good one. Once again, with ridiculous rewindability. I'm serious when I say I've watched it many times. I'd highly suggest seeing the movie even if you haven't seen The Room. But I'd also suggest buying the book and seeing what you might have missed out on. And hey, if you're still looking for your room fix, well then I've got news for you. For one, Tommy and Greg still work on projects together. And their last one, while I still unfortunately haven't seen it, I'm looking forward to. I want to watch it. It kind of looks promising. And believe it or not, the rest of the cast are still working together on a project called The Room Actors. Where are they now? Maybe it's not the most catchy title, but what were they going to call it? The building in which there are rooms? It's not... I don't think many people would understand that. Anyway, for what it's worth, it's actually kind of entertaining. Cheesy as hell, sure, but definitely worth the watch. Especially if you're an avid fan. And it's all put together by Robin Paris, who was in the room for those 2 or 3 scenes. And the last time I checked, they were criminally undersubbed. So do me a favor, head over to their channel, and let them know who sent you. So with that being said, I'm the Social Injustice Warrior V Infuso, and if you like the words that came out of my mouth hole and you too want to become a VTard, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's plenty more where this video came from. Follow me on Twitter because, hell, why not? It's not considered stalking if it's on the internet, am I right? And don't forget to join the Discord. I don't have anything catchy to add to that, but just join it. Just go do it. And if you have a free moment of time and a free dollar to spare, then head over to my Patreon, where for just $1, you too could help keep this boat afloat. And if you don't have that dollar, but you do have a free moment of time, then hit the share button. It will help me out tremendously.
VTards, oh.